This is Extracted with your hosts, George Nguyen and Alex Simmons.
Welcome back to the show, everybody.
Welcome back to the show. Great to see you, George,
Great to see
as
you too,
always.
Alex.
All right, so let's get to it.
The No King's March. What are your thoughts about that?
Wow, I'm taking a non-political view on this. The way I view it, it's an attempt by the Democratic Party to get more money and to get more votes without enacting any real change. And there's a lot of authoritarian power that's moving to the executive level. And I feel like the Democrats don't want that to change because they want that to be there when they take over, to continue with the same type of authoritarian in a different direction, but nevertheless not meant to help the people, but to keep the people under control. So the real reason behind the march is not to empower the people, but to keep the people weak and extract enough value in the form of votes and money from them, to achieve what the parties have always achieved: nothing, just getting rich.
Well, it's not nothing, right? It's something, but for very few
Nothing for
people.
the people, nothing.
I first want to say, right, I think it's great that we still have people who care enough about the country to get together, right, and to assemble and to protest. Um, However, I think I share the same similar sentiments with you, right, around I feel like the march was effective in getting people together and being very cathartic, right? As a mass to air our grievances. The problem is, how I see it is these grievances are very passive. We need to see action, right? We need to be like organizing so that we have a clear plan on what needs to be done to ensure that the changes we think of and envision becomes reality. Because I think you're right. These protests without clear action, like action plans afterwards, right? So you think about this as like day zero, right? Like day zero, you go out there, you march and all that stuff, and you get your frustrations. But the real work happens on day one, right? After day zero is what's going to happen. Are we calling for mass boycotts? Are we divesting, right? Are we pressuring our public funds to divest from these companies that are supporting this war on the middle class, right? Um, I feel like you're right in the sense that this kind of event is meant to not really empower people. I think there's a facade of empowerment because they see numbers. But in actuality, what is the game plan from the Democratic Party, right? Um, like keep repeating we don't want a dictator. That's not going to do anything. What are you going to do to stop him, right? Two is we're going to tax the rich. It's like, okay, they own everything. They have sophisticated lawyers. They can work through the legal system to ensure that they maintain power. You can tax them all you want, but they're going to find ways to pass on that tax to consumers. And I think this is the insidious part that we keep forgetting about, right? I think we talk about it separately. I think most Americans know this, right? Like the rich are able to buy politicians because they do already. We all know that. And they're able to write the laws. And you have firsthand experience in seeing how laws are literally being written by lobbyists and handed to members of Congress so they can just like stamp their signature on these legislations, right? So that's where, and this is where we need to coordinate as a populace, right? To address the fact that if we don't own anything, we will never have enough power to force change. Right now, taxing the rich is not enough. It's in your book, you stated it, very clearly, right? It's a cost of doing business for them. You tax them what, 5%? They're going to pass on that 5% to consumers in the form of quote unquote inflation or shrinkflation, right? So I'm with you there that I think this march is only serving the purpose of keeping people docile, right? And not angry enough. They are it becomes like a pressure valve release button, right? To keep people from rioting. But it doesn't do anything in terms of structurally changing who holds power and who
There's
gets to
no
extract value.
there's no intent in changing that dynamic,
Mhm.
right? And for good reason. So I've gotten to the realization, especially when I worked on the Hill, that no law passes unless it benefits somebody making a profit, or an entity or a group of entities or an industry making a profit. So if you look almost behind every law that is passed in Congress, there is an entity out there that is benefiting out of it. And those entities are sponsoring both the Republicans and the Democrats alike.
Yeah.
This is how Congress works today. And it gets to the point where the abusive power of corporations, or is what I call in the book the cloud lords, because there's like this neo-feudal system that is being created and is being enforced by Congress. So when you look at the No Kings movement as, is this movement against this neo-feudalism that is being set up? And the reality is it's not, because they don't want that to change. The organizers want everything to stay just the same. They don't want the people to realize the power that they have, because once the party changes in power, they want to make sure that they rule without any sort of people realizing we actually have power. Right? So this is kind of how these parties are thinking. They want people to, sure, yell out loud, but stop there. The reality is that when things become unfair for too long and too unfair, eventually there will be more than yelling, as we have seen with events, with Luigi Mangione.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that, right? I think the narrative that's being pushed out by both parties is this is a war between Democrats and Republicans, right? And keeping people so distracted on that theme, and so that people don't realize this is not a war between conservative values versus liberal values. This is a war between the American middle class and everyone, who are being impoverished or in the process of being, you know, impoverished, right? And this is talking about like people who are part of the middle class or upper middle class being pushed down the economic rungs of the ladder, right? It's part of this movement that they're pushing, right? More people down, keeping people distracted by saying, "Oh, you know what? Your problems are here because the other side of the aisle is creating laws that only benefit them and is hurting you, right? Whereas what we as a collective in America, should realize, and more importantly, I think more and more people are realizing this, um, is that it's not just about awareness that this is happening, that this is actually a concerted effort by the cloud lords, right? And our politicians who are bought by these cloud lords. Um, there's this concentration of efforts to make sure that they extract as much value out of people's labor, right? As possible. Um, and we see this through working more automation, right, as well. And then from there, the value that's created that regular people capture, which is through money, right? That is being extracted as well through inflation, right? And through higher grocery prices. Um, so yeah, we need to be more angry about this. That it's not about my neighbor who votes red or my neighbor who votes blue. It's about, hey, look, these cloud lords are exploiting everyone, whether you're blue or red. Everyone's being exploited. And we're being exploited by working longer hours for the same pay. And even that pay raise that most people get doesn't even keep up with inflation, right? This is why we see this kind of disproportionate increase in the cost of home ownership while wages still remain relatively flat. And this is not just with housing, right? With homes, but it's also the cost of education. It costs more to get a degree than it did 30 years ago, 70 years ago, and it's going to continue to increase. And so this war is not about being blue or red. This war is about the cloud lords extracting everything, extracting all the values that people, everyday people, create. And it's not just through your work, but think about every single click that happens online on your phone, um, every single meme that you share, right? All the engagement online, they're harvesting all this stuff. And we as people might think that, oh, it's nothing. It's just me clicking on ads or clicking on videos, right? But these companies are able to extract the collective actions of everybody through these clicks and shares and engagement to create models that predicts the likelihood of consumption, right? And they're able to use this data that comes from people, right? And this is why, I talk about there's real value in everyday people. It's just that right now, the value they're presenting is butts in seats at the office or at the assembly line, right? Or in the field working, right? Your value is when you clock in and it stops when you clock out. But what we're seeing and what we're saying, right, is that no, like the value that people actually create is 24/7. It's what you consume, right? Not just digitally, but also in real life. The coffee you buy, the dinners that you dine out, right? As well as the ingredients you buy home, you buy and bring home, right, to cook. This all these things create value, and these companies know it, but they are treating it like, oh, it's just nothing, right? We talk about that this being the new oil of the digital age, right? It's information and data. And so this is the real value. If we are the oil wells, right? Think each individual is an oil well. How do we ensure that the people who are tapping into our individual oil wells are compensating us, right? Appropriately. And right now, that conversation is not being had. Um, and right now, this conversation of, oh, let's just tax the rich, it's like, no, like that's not sufficient.
Well, for the first time in our history, you have both the left and the right basically working for the big corporations at the detriment of the working class. And that's scary. I mean, and this is where I'm very careful when, we've been having this discussion whether mutualism as a movement kind of fits a little bit on the left. And I tend to disagree. I think, mutualism is meant to be balanced, right? So it's not left or right. It's not Democrat or Republican. It's not blue or red, right? So it's not meant to even, okay, well, mutualism is against profit. It's not, right? But it is against abusive profit. It's not like, oh, well, mutualism is against property. Well, it's not. You can own property. But when you own half a city of properties and you're forcing people into homelessness and families into homelessness because you are trying to reap a big profit out of it, then that's not normal, right? So then you have that balance is broken. So mutualism is meant to be balanced. Are you familiar with the symbiotic relationship between the fig tree and the fig wasp?
Yes, no, I am familiar with this.
The fig tree relies on pollen, right? It needs to be pollinized by the fig wasp.
Yep.
And the fig wasp needs the fig tree's ovaries to lay its eggs.
Yep.
Right, for its offsprings. Well, sometimes the wasp cheats, right? And by cheating, it lays the eggs on the ovaries of the fig tree, but it doesn't pollinize, right? So when that happens, when the fig tree selectively identifies those fruits that have too many eggs from the wasp, that have not been pollinized by the wasp.
Yep.
And it basically kills that fruit and the offspring of that wasp. So it basically eradicates all that line, right? So when the cheating is out of control, nature tends to balance itself. And my fear is that we're getting to that point where the cheating by these big corporations in this search to maximize profit at the expense of the working class. We're getting to that point. We are already at that point where we're out of balance. And when things are out of balance, nature, including human nature, tends to force that back into balance. And what I'm hoping is that through our work, I don't want violence either, right? So we don't want violence. But it seems that that anger that is being accumulated right now into the working class may lead to violent outbursts, similarly to the story of the fig tree and the fig wasp. So the hope is that Congress will see the light and will be able to put things back into balance. And right now, it doesn't seem that that's happening, which in my mind, I think will lead to violence being inevitable.
Yeah, I just want to revisit like your comment about the two-party system and how you talk about being out of balance. And I think it's the balance won't come if we continue to press this right now extreme capitalist model, right? Where you extract as much as you can out of anything and anyone. And model is not built on equilibrium or symbiosis, right? It's built on extraction. And I think where mutualism is different from, like the other thoughts like socialism, communism, even libertarianism, right? Is that mutualism is, if you think about it, it's definitely more, and you talk about being more balanced. I think about it more being the purpose or the intention of mutualism is about being centered around people and their needs, right? We still offer the mechanics that allows communities and people to thrive, right? As individuals or as individual communities. We're not forcing everyone to be the same, right? But especially modern mutualism, right, is structured around equality, right? And equity, actually more important than equality, right? Equity, right? It's having access to resources that enables true empowerment and control, right? And we talk about this ownership piece um, because this ownership piece is critical. You can't legislate fast enough going through the current legal system that we have, right, to address the rapid changes that these cloud lords are able to push, right? It's not just the cloud lords, but the companies they own, right? They're able to hire armies of lobbyists to march like into Washington, D.C. and force the hands of all these politicians because it's not hard. They are able to fund campaigns and defund campaigns and end any politician who dares to step out of line, right? We see this, like with, I think more recently, right, with the war on Gaza, right? And the genocide in Gaza really is everyone knows it's wrong, but why are they so afraid to speak up and speak out about it, right? Because you look at who owns them, right? 80% of them is 86, I think it's like 83% plus are funded by this cohort of lobbyists, right? And so everyone's afraid to speak up.
I was very, very shocked to see the amount of freshman congressmen, so first year in Congress, that in the first year, they are building themselves houses, villas that are really not on the books. So they don't ever have to report them to Congress because they technically don't own it. There's a trust somewhere that owns that house and they don't have to report that to Congress, but it's their vacation house, their vacation yacht. I would challenge you to pick any congressman and you will see how their wealth has grown significantly. And I've seen it, and it's troubling. You don't get to the point of being elected in Congress unless you have big sponsors to get you there. We have a very, very corrupt Congress. And I think that's part of the problem. And that's not even discussed because, again, you don't see that wealth. It's being hidden very well.
Well, I mean, you went through this whole experience too, right? Running for office too. It's that the selection process, the curation of candidates happen before they even hit the ballot, right? It's through these forums and groups that both parties have that grooms people, right? That groom people to speak a certain way, to adopt certain agendas, right? And then they get pushed into the primaries, right? And by the time they're in the primaries, like you can have 30 candidates, but the in the primary, more often than not, the candidate that the party have chosen, that they know they can control and they can dictate to, that candidate is going to win that primary. And then once, your blue candidate and your red candidate is on that national ballot or the state ballot, it doesn't matter who you pick. That's the reality. It doesn't matter who you pick because they will go on TV to tell you what you want to hear. But when you look at their votes, there's always enough votes to pass legislation that is deeply unpopular, but magically benefits some of the wealthiest people in this country. And we're talking about not the 10%, not the 1%. We're talking about the 0.1%. Money, there's always enough votes from both sides of the aisle to pass legislation through that guarantees that billions of dollars will be extracted from everyday taxpayers. Because let's face it, the government cannot function without the taxes that we give it. And this money is being extracted from everyday taxpayers and being funneled to these large corporations and these special interest groups. And yeah, that's where the problem is, right? It's not just at the national ballot where don't wait until November because these guys didn't wait until November. They're already planning January, like 1. Like they are planning on how to ensure that the candidate they handpick will be the candidate that wins the primary. And it doesn't matter if you vote red or blue. These candidates will always be aligned to the interests of the cloud lords and the lobbyists.
Right. So in just the district that I run into, and I ran first as a Republican and then as a Democrat and didn't find my place in either of the parties because I didn't like their selection process and saw how dirty it is on either side, and did not want to basically sell myself. But like in that particular district, so there's tens of millions of dollars that are being spent by candidates to win that seat. And I'm talking tens, so over $10 million in order to be elected in that seat. But, neither party want too many people to go in the primaries because they control the primaries. In the district I was running in, there were, 600,000 to 800,000 people that can vote. But the primary on the Republican side was decided all you needed to do is get 13,000 votes. So if you could get 13,000 votes, 13,000 out of 800,000, you win the primary.
Yep.
Because only 30,000 people would go out to vote in the primary. So you have a very small minority deciding who the Republican or the Democrat candidate is. And you have to spend a lot of money in that process to get those votes. And if you don't have a sponsor, or unless you're a millionaire, you have millionaire friends, you're not going to be able to raise much. So as a result, every single person that you see that has been elected in Congress has had to sell themselves to a certain entity in order to get that financial support, to be able to fundraise for getting signatures or to get the help to get signatures. So yeah, I mean it's a very corrupt process.
I think this goes back to when we talk about the action the organizing and the action that's needed. Like when we see, the No King's March, right? It's like, guys, like, what are we gonna do? Like it's great that we all got together to protest and air our grievances, but the machine that is electing candidates is are working in the background 24/7. And they have concrete actions, they have lawyers, they have strategists, people to ensure that their candidate will be up for election against another candidate that they also own, right? So you pick blue, you pick red, it all tastes like shit. That's the reality because these people they're not aligned with the interests of everyday Americans. They're aligned with the interests of the oligarchs, right? And the interest groups that have already made them sign a pledge to give me your firstborn, you give me your soul if you want to win this seat. And they sign it and they're happy about it because all they care about is access to power. And once they get into power, they become even more corrupt, right? Because now that they've made it to the next rung and have a seat in Congress, more special interest groups are going to step in and say, you know what? Now we need you. Before we didn't know, so we're not going to bet on you. But now that we know you have a seat, we're going to ensure that you win your re-election. And here's the money. But before we give you that money, make sure you pass this legislation that we wrote to your policy analysts, right? And make sure you get the signatures for this and pass this. And even if they're not tasked with that specific thing, they're tasked with just shut up and sign this because the machine is already navigating through every single parliamentary member, right? And ensuring that we're going to get enough votes to make sure that this legislation passes. And this is why, yeah, like we need to organize. Like it's the days of just like protesting and feeling good to like air our grievances. It's not going to result in real action. Like we need to organize and take real action.
It's like you're looking at the Democratic Party, right? So they see that the people are angry and they're trying to take advantage, and through this No Kings movement, they're trying to take advantage of it, of their anger to get votes and money, right? But in reality, I mean, let's look at APAC and how APAC is helping certain candidates fundraise. If you look at the 7th district of Virginia and Congressman Vindman, who goes out in public and says, I'm against the war, in Iran, or, we need to make sure that we help the Palestinian people. But you know what I want to see? I want to see the position paper that he actually wrote for APAC, because he wrote one, because APAC has been helping him fundraise money. So he has, right? So there's one thing, and that is a private one that is not being shared with the public. I want to see that position paper and compare that with what he's saying in public to get votes. So in public, yes, he is, supporting the No Kings movement, but in private, he is supporting really Israel. All because, that's what his position paper stated. And so, we're going to have a Democratic candidate who will win the primary, which is going to be Vindman. And then we will have a Republican candidate. And I guarantee you that both of them would have been sponsored by APAC. So, the same organization, right, has been helping each side to fundraise.
Well, I mean, you just look at, like bringing it back to like what's happening now, right? Like some of us have watched the speech last night from our glorious dear, and it's just a bunch
Hey, don't
of
you
speaking
criticize
points.
the golden age, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
The golden age. Just
Yep.
don't talk about the price of gas. Okay?
Yep. Yeah, or the
But
cost of food.
other than that, and the cost
Yeah.
of food and people getting fired, and the economy going to shit, and we're in a golden age.
Yep. But yeah, no, I mean, you look at the speech, and it's a bunch of speaking points that were spoon-fed, right? But when you actually look at you talk about like Vindman and all these Democrats and Republicans, right? Not so much Republicans right now, but Democrats who are outraged by this war. Magically, there's just enough vote to send more weapons and fund to continue to fund this war, and no one's chastising or even like legally, putting handcuffs to stop this war from perpetuating, right, into a bigger and more disastrous war. And yeah, it goes back to this corruption that you talked about, right? And it's really unfortunate because what we're seeing now with gas prices increasing over $1 within like what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, um, the supply chain, like more recently, I think that a lot of the plastics manufacturer are freaking out now because they're telling their workers, so hey, we need to stop production because we don't have the precursors to manufacture. So all of a sudden, okay, you don't have a bunch of plastic stuff. Like, oh, it's not that bad. Well, the entire economy functions on these polymers, and we don't have that. What's going to happen to the beverages? What's going to happen to the bags that we need to package foods, right? This has a cascading effect because it's not just about not having enough bags or bottles. It's about the cost of what this means to everyday Americans because less bottles, less bags means higher prices, right? Because you're not able to produce the same volume as before. So you can't package as much food. So what happens? Demand increases and supplies are limited. So you're going to see hyperinflation. And this is not coming in 2 years. This is literally coming within the next couple months.
We're
And
going to have the largest food crisis since the 1970s in the world. And I mean, the impact of this irresponsible war cannot be understated. I mean, even the impact, one is with losing alliances in Europe, but also in Southeast Asia, right? So where you would think that we need these Southeast Asian nations to be aligned with the United States in the event that China decides to invade Taiwan, for example. Well, we look at countries like the Philippines, right? So you had like a lot of conflict between the Philippines and China on the southeast, right? China
South China
Sea,
Sea, yep.
the South
Mhm.
China Sea, and well, Philippines only has oil to last it until June, so it's got 2 more months of oil. It cannot get oil through the Strait of Hormuz anymore. You know where it's going to get its oil from now? China. So we have just handed the Philippines to China. So you will, I mean, I was going to say I don't know, but I know who the people that are doing the thinking are in this current administration. And I regret to inform the American people that they're idiots. I mean, it's just the inability to see second and third level effects of these decisions. It's just amazes me.
Well, I wouldn't call them idiots because I think what they're not telling us is that they're placing bets on these things will happen, right? So it's not that they're idiots. They know what's going to happen and they're betting on it happening so that they can enrich themselves, right? We know, certain secretaries, their families have placed huge bets on tariffs to play out a certain way, right? Where they will extract maximum value from that. And even the bombings, right, in Iran, people going on, insiders placing bets on Polymarket, right? And in Kalshi, right? For certain things to happen, and it played out. And these people are making millions of dollars off of it. So I wouldn't call them idiots. They're very smart. Their actions might not be as transparent because we're only seeing the impact on the front line, but where they're extracting value is at a different layer, right? And so I wouldn't call them idiots. They're very smart people. They're just they're just evil, right? They're willing to sacrifice the livelihoods of tens and tens of millions of Americans so that they can enrich themselves. Like
I
that's the
stand by
point.
I stand by my statements. And you know, by idiot, I don't mean stupid, because otherwise I would have used the word stupid. But
Yeah,
even that would be accurate. You know, but again, it goes back to the aspect of balance, right? So you have to keep the interests of the nation at heart, and you have to keep the interests of the people at heart. And because when you don't, things get off balance. And right now, that's what's happening. For exactly this, the reason that you mentioned, right? So they're in it to enrich themselves, but you cannot do it at the detriment of the entire system. And that's what's happening. And because of that, there will be repercussions. And we will not like the repercussions, and they will not like
yeah.
the
But
repercussions. So
but
because they're failing to see that symbiotic relationship, that this will in the end hurt them as well, they're idiots.
that's why they're building all these bunkers, right? At the
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
cost of taxpayers, right? I mean, like this is the funny part, right? It's like people are not connecting, right? It's like okay, all of a sudden they're moving these people within the administration, military locations, so that they can be protected by these military bases, and now they're building bunkers underneath, so that the moment shit hits the fan, they have a place to hide. But it's funny, right? Because we talked about this before, where like, okay, cool, you build a bunker, but bunkers still need air, still needs water, still needs electricity. Like, it doesn't stop a clever engineer or some activists, right, to cause problems for the water and electricity and all air to get to these bunkers, right? So yeah, I think the it's really atrocious where we talk about balance, that equilibrium we're working towards, right? It's a manifestation of anger, and I think right now people are. I know we said this earlier, right? It's like people aren't angry enough. And the mechanism, the machine that's behind these protests and stuff like that are so well organized and with the intention to be a pressure relief valve, right? Where they know people are frustrated. And so they get them together, create a cathartic like moment to release that pressure so that everyone's like, oh, okay, Saturday we get together, we hang out, we air our grievances. Sunday we go back home and everything's back to normal, right? There's no action plan, there's no to-do list that is disseminated so that come Saturday or come Sunday and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right, for the next 365 days, right? We put pressure on the system that is doing the extraction. And we create as much pain as possible economically, right? So that they take action. Because right now, I think there's a lot of hope that the next election cycle is going to change everything. It's not, because we've already told you guys, right? Like these people are hand curated by the very machine that controls everything. Uh, and so it doesn't matter if you pick blue or red, it's always going to be the same. It's the same flavor with two straws in a cup. Like whether you choose the blue straw or the red straw, you're still sipping the same shit. Um, yeah. So people need to, one, realize this, and two, I think, not just get frustrated, but let's channel that frustration into real work that can be done, work that is sustained, right? We talk about like the problem with a lot of this, like these protests, right? Is that it's a quick burst, it gets the media attention, but it's not sustained. Like you look at the civil rights movement, you look at the opposition with the U.S. war on Vietnam, right? All these protests were not just one incident. It was years long campaign of applying pressure on the system to effect change, right? And so we can't just wish that the next candidate is going to save us. They're not. They are bought by the same people, right? The same corporations, the same special interest group. we as Americans need to get together and organize and create sustained pressure on the system so that the system is forced to change in our interest, right? We talk about being more balanced. It's getting the system to change so that it becomes more people-centered, right? Like
Well,
we don't need
it's
these.
it's even more insidious than that. One big thing that is important for the government is that monopoly on force. So you have the No Kings protests that are meant to release the valve because they want to make sure that people don't. This way, they control the anger, right? So the people actually are angry.
Mhm.
So what they do is they have these protests to control that anger, right? But then you also have the government making a statement and saying we still have a monopoly on force. So you can go out and be angry, but that's it. You can't. We're going to remind you that we're still in control. And the way they did that is they started killing a couple of innocent protesters, like you've seen
Mhm.
with Rene Good. You saw that with Alex Preti, where you shoot a couple of innocent protesters in the head. And that discourages you. I don't want. I'm out there to protest, but I don't want to be killed. So
Mhm.
I'm not gonna cross this line. So you have really almost like a collaboration between the Democrats and the Republicans to just keep the people under control while you have the big corporations basically robbing us blind at this point
Yep. And this is why I,
with the support of the both parties working
yep.
together. So there's definitely a conspiracy there. So there's definitely, there's just noise, but it's what's happened in January in Minneapolis is very, very tragic. And from my perspective, that represented, we're a sign that we are very close of losing or the death of our democracy. And to me, that is very scary.
Well, this is why I think my view on this is that, and why I chose the word frustration versus anger, right? Because frustration really for me is an inward scope, right? You talk about, the government knows this, right? That like people aren't angry enough because if they were angry enough, they would take action, right? You know what anger looks like? Luigi, right? Why, people who are afraid of anger, you look at the CEO of Five Guys, right? He forfeits his bonus check, $1.5 million to give to people because he's like, I don't want to be like that the United Healthcare CEO, right? That's anger, right? Because this is why you talk about like, the government shooting people right in the head, right, during these protests, because they know this is not anger. This is frustration, right? People are frustrated because it's an inward look. And because once you look inward, right, you have fears of like, oh, if I act out too much, I might get shot in the head too, right? So we begin to like, oh, like you're not seeing yourself as part of this collective mass that's effecting change out of anger. You're seeing yourself as I'm really deeply frustrated with what's happening to me. And I see people who are frustrated too. And we're getting together and we're airing our grievances. But that frustration is very inward looking and is not outward looking, right? Because once you like turn that from inward to outward, you begin to see like, oh, there is a systematic process here that's ensuring that we remain frustrated, but never angry enough to take real action. And Luigi, right? He was beyond frustrated with the healthcare system, right? That's anger there. And he took action. Again, we're not advocating violence here. We're just observing, right, what's happening. And this is where I think the machine is very smart, right? They create these pressure release valves, just like the Romans, right? Building circuses, right? Right? Keeping the masses entertained. But you can only entertain them long enough until things run dry, right? Like, sure, people are, like are getting together, doing the marches, like the No King's March. But where it's gonna hit home, it's not when they skip a meal. It's when their child is forced to skip a meal, when their child is forced to not be able to buy school supplies come, back to school this September, this August. that's where real anger is going to happen because it's not just about me anymore. It's about my family, people who rely on me, right? And that's when frustration becomes anger. It's when they see the people around them, people who they love and care for, are being affected by this. Because right now it's okay, higher gas prices, I'll absorb it, whatever. But the moment there's less food on the table, that's when people get angry.
And I tend to believe that the people are already there because, which is why there's a big concern for, from the government. And actually, if you look at DHS's national security concerns for 2026, is those lone wolf type of attacks, which is what Luigi has done. And so the government knows this. Like, we're not talking about anything that is not known already. So you're absolutely right. The reason why, they are allowing these protests as a release valve. But yeah, we gotta finish on a positive note. So I think again we have this tendency of, we're seeing all these grievances and we're seeing all these issues that are happening, and we dig deeper and deeper. And at one point, it's there's this negative energy that's being built up. So let's find a way to release this into, I was gonna say a word, but I'm gonna abstain. But into something more positive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, what I'm seeing, and I think this is part of our, like broader view on mutualism, right? And more people-centered policies, right? Or actions, is, more my more recent experience at the PTA, seeing, the PTA get together to raise, what was it, like $46,000 for a Title IX school in our neighborhood. And this, when you actually put this into perspective, right, with a hyper like inflation happening and a weak jobs economy, parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents are getting together to raise real dollars that are needed at underfunded schools. That to me is a great example of people getting together and understanding the real issue. And instead of waiting for the district or higher authorities to take action and provide funding, they're rolling up their sleeves and doing these fundraisers to make sure that there will be books and school supplies come back to school in August and September. Like that to me is like a very like encouraging sign of like people taking action and not just sitting there being frustrated, right?
Yeah, my definition of taking action, right, is go out there in the community and volunteer at the local food bank.
Yep.
Go out there and reach out. And it's like, even if, you don't have a lot of money, but just volunteer those couple of hours to connect again to the community, right? So we've fallen asleep and forgot that there's a symbiotic relationship between all of us at the local level, and we need to try to reconnect with that. We're not meant to just live alone, and I know that, right? So we have in capitalism this idea that we have to compete against each other, we have to be better than the other person. And that's not true, right? So happiness comes from being able to, comes from a united community, or from a community that can work with each other. Um, and I encourage everybody to go out there and take action, whether it's protesting together or, volunteering at the food bank to help those that have less and are struggling.
Mhm.
It's very, very rewarding. And I think we need more of that. Change comes in our households, change comes in our communities, um, and change comes into, do some research about the person you're going to go vote for. Don't just settle for Democrat or Republican because otherwise your vote doesn't matter. Okay, so your vote doesn't matter, but you vote for who you believe is representing your beliefs and your values. It doesn't matter if it's wasted, because the moment more and more of us are realizing that, yes, we can stand for our beliefs, then that's when that vote will truly matter and will make a difference. And you will see more and more people being elected into Congress that have our values. And if you get into the community and you meet more people, you realize that a lot of us have the same values. And a lot of us want goodness in this world. So yeah, I'll end it with that.
That's great. Great way to look at it. And always a friendly reminder, if you enjoy the content that we're producing, uh, please drop a like and share and comment. Uh, this is this movement is not about, two guys and a handful of people. This is about all of us. We want to understand like what matters to you and how you see the future, uh, and how we can shape this together. We also have a website, mutualistparty.org. It's not a party in the traditional sense, but it is part of this movement that we're advancing. And hopefully we get more people to join and truly make this world just a little better.
Yeah. Stay tuned for the beauty within and the beauty without.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.